Very good morning to all of you. You all are very welcome to the certificate course on scientific writing. And this is a course starting from 20th August, that means today, and it will go for several weeks and to be completing all the topics what we have published through the flyer. And first of all, I'd like to invite the ISL President-elect as well as the acting President, Dr. Kamal Laksuri, to address the gallery.
Yeah.
So, over to you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Professor Banduni. Good morning to all of you, and to some, good afternoon and good evening. I heard lots of members are joining from abroad. Professor Ajit Dialis, our resource person today. Professor Banduni, the chairman of the special subcommittee organizing this event. All the members joining from different parts of the country and also different parts of the world. Very warm welcome to this very important event. Starting from today, this will go in episodes. So this is the first one. I'm not going to explain in the objectives of this workshop. I think Professor Banduni will do it. And in very briefly, the ISL, the Institution of Engineers Sri Lanka, having understood the importance of this aspect and also the need of our members, and we consider it as our responsibility in assisting the members in publishing their applied research work or innovations they do, they involve in. We know that our engineers, our members are involved in many great innovations, applied research, but still when it comes to the publication, we do not see such important outcomes are properly published or they are not going in the same spirit we engage in the work. So we find many shortcomings and also the improvements needed to be done. So as a responsible body, having understood this gap, we decided to conduct this type of programs and to help our members. And then we entrusted this work to the arm handling this, the Library and Publications Committee. The chairman is Professor Ranjit Disanayaga. So this committee appointed a special subcommittee, and the Professor Banduni is heading it. So they have organized this first course, online certificate course for the engineers from the industry, and also we have invited other members also. So actually the importance of this work is we don't have to explain further because it's amply evidenced by the large number of responses we have received, and especially in a Saturday morning. So already I think we have more than 140 so registered, and so that itself shows us the significant importance of this event. And in this today first program, we have invited a veteran to the subject, the Professor Ajit Dialis. He doesn't need any introduction. He's not a stranger to us. So, and as I learned, the committee has arranged future programs with both local and foreign resource persons. So I hope our members will get the maximum use of it. So without taking further time, let's move into the proceedings. I again welcome all of you on behalf of ISL and thank for joining this event, and especially our resource person, Professor Ajit Dialis. Thank you very much. Over to you, Professor Banduni.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kamal Laksuri, and for your very warm welcome, as well as the introduction to our course. And as you all know that this is starting today, and it will go for Saturdays and Sunday from 9 AM to 11 AM. So objective is clear to all of you. Because we know that though we are having problems in our industries, we don't know that how to formulate them into a research. And also though we are conducting research, again, we are struggling with the publication. So without publication, the other people in our scientific community or the engineering community, they may not know that what we are doing. So sometimes we are repeating those kind of research again and again, and there is no historical data there is no historical data regarding that this kind of data. And therefore that we started, and also that all the resource persons from here onwards are veteran, and also that local and international people will join with us. And the other thing is that to get the certificate, you have to pay 100,000 rupees. Otherwise, this certificate course is free of charge. So this is very interesting, and also that I hope that we will find it out in a very important. And we expect all of you get the all benefit out of this program. And tomorrow we will not have the program, but in next Saturday and Sunday we will let you know through the flyer and also through the emails that how our works are going on, who will be the resource person. And so today our resource person is Professor Aditya Lewis. So you all may know him, and especially the engineering crowd that we know him very well. He's the Dean of the Faculty of Graduate Studies in University of Moratuwa, as well as he's a senior professor in the Department of Chemical and Process Engineering. And especially he's the Chief Innovation Officer of the National Innovation Center, which established very recently, especially to encourage the innovations in the country, as well as promote and commercialization of those innovations. So in future, we are planning to have another workshop on innovations and how we are doing patenting and all, after we completed this workshop on writing and how to do a research publication, as well as as the title we said, on certificate course on scientific writing. Thank you very much once again to all of you to join with us. And now I'm handing over the forum to Professor Aditya Lewis. Sir, the forum is over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Banduni. Thank you, Dr. Kamal, as well, for the invitation and the welcome. So let me quickly get on to the topic of the day, so that you are starting. It's about a course it's about scientific writing. The reasons were given, and I'm driving on to look at the research side, because you start doing some handling a problem. The problem you may have think about of it by yourself. You may have come out of it, come into that issue, because as part of your work, I believe that most of you are from the industry. Anyway, I'm interested in general, but I have this inclination to the industry, joining hands to do research. And I will kind of explain why the importance of that, as well as individuals from industry doing research. So let me, for the interest of bandwidth, seek permission in switching off the video, and I'm using the slides next. I hope you are seeing the slides. So this is the first one, how to formulate an engineering problem into research. And this will go on ending up, as I see, publishing your research that you have completed in a highly impactful journal. So that's the journey. The important part is actually the research as a researcher. And what you are doing, and then it was mentioned, you need to communicate. You need to communicate, and that is the part of writing. But I also will bring in a little importance, an addition. How can you do research, write, but also make an impact in a different way to the economy? Not that when you solve a problem, there is no economic benefit. There is definitely, because you're changing what you're doing. And as engineers, that's important to understand. However, we can add by looking at intellectual property and patents, which I will also try to mention, because that's also relevant to the industry. So I don't go it as a very descriptive session. I will take on stories to emphasize the point, and hopefully that may be okay. And so I'll be pitching in an oil expeller that we worked with, interestingly, over a local issue, and maybe even these days, maybe of relevance, because we are talking about, okay, can I get more biodiesel out of it? So all these problems are relevant because you are trying to live, you are trying to improve yourself, the quality of life, not only of yourself, but the rest of as well, and improve the industry. So problems we face every day, and how we respond to solving them, or how we address them, actually gives us the strength. And through those activities, the system becomes resilient. And that's another aspect, the importance of the researcher. Let me move in just to highlight this aspect, science and engineering, because the issue, the topic says engineering research or the engineering problems. It's important to understand the scientists investigate the world, right, as it is, because it's unraveling the mysteries of nature. That's the objective. And there's so much of such things to do, because we hardly still may understand what's going around us, because it's evolved over millions of years, and we have our civilized life, in a sense, it's about 10,000 years as human beings. So engineers, out of the lot, create the world that never has been, right? So you see a difference of studying the world as it is to creating a world that never has been. And you know that, but the point is, can we say, okay, one is superior to other, or we cannot do, we can do without science? No, this is not. I'm talking about working together. And when science brings in this knowledge, we tend to take this knowledge as tools and create things, right? And come out with tall structures, the bridges, processors, industries, chips. In a sense, it's not just a potato chip, maybe also the microchip, right? Because chipping and creating the chip it's an engineering issue. It's you come out with, because it was never there before. So we have this, we need to understand this. So the appreciation of, so what more to say than Einstein comment on this differentiation. So we need to understand, and the world that never has been is coming through because engineers, or the engineering thinking, we take on a problem. We say, look, we can do something here and we can better ourselves. So we engage our entire life or a time into doing this. And as a result, we have something brand new, which others also will enjoy. And then collectively and cumulatively, the world keeps on changing. And we must also know that sometimes it's not always have been so good. We have had problems coming through, like climate change. Again, we have to address them. So let's look at, so the problems and the studying nature. So hopefully, when you are looking at this research and publication, you may also be looking at doing a research degree alongside while you are doing that. Even from the industry, you may be taking, okay, I will do my work, I will take a little bit of leave, but I'm taking leave to solve my industry problem, and thereby may I gain something as a degree as well? You can. Now, what is interesting is why I have put a graduating cap and a Socrates side by side. The reason is, I mean, that's why I go to Greek. Don't think I'm forgetting Asia and what we have done ourselves, but this has a link to the PhD, so that's why I'm taking this link. You see, the Greeks are known for studying nature, and in the sense that they were the first, as is from that side of era, who started thinking logically about the world around them. Now, that's what they did. Now, they started thinking logically in the sense, why it's happening, why is this scenario, situation, how come it's here, why this is changing, all these questions. So you see the term philosophy, you're thinking, right? And so their thoughts and reflections collected into this subject called natural philosophy, right? And later on, this natural philosophy, we coined the word science. However, what we take, so all science were initially looking at this natural philosophy. Of course, today, we have in science the concept of experimentation. The Greeks didn't do the experiment side. In a sense, they were looking at studying what's around them logically. But you see this situation of, if you take an MPhil or PhD, we have this Doctor of Philosophy, right? And this philosophy has still come from that concept. So for somebody who has done something meaningful and sufficient quality and you bestow an honor. And that honor is maybe a PhD degree or the MPhil degree. And we still have this connection, the word philosophy in there, right? So this is the history in a sense. Now, of course, we are now looking at, not as science, looking at the natural world. We look at, we have this knowledge and we have this problem. And how can we use this tool, the knowledge tools, and solve the problem and move on? Now, that's what we are looking at. So that is what is engineering problems in a sense. Because you actually think about, look, I have this knowledge, what I can do with it. Then you probably see potential of doing something different. And when you do it that way, you may think, look, I have a solution. So it may have been the way that the wheels came around, right? Once the wheels were in, world changed. Once the fire was understood and the ability to control that fire came, raw food became barbecue, sushi became, in the sense that the world was different. We were enjoying food differently. And now we are not going back. We still continue to evolve and improve on that. So you can see how we use this knowledge and transform ourselves. And that's what we are doing. It's nice to see the enthusiasm, all right? The big numbers joining in with the concept of understanding or participating in the scientific writing. But obviously, that's an end point. It may not even actually the end, but you have a lot of work that you will be doing as a researcher, looking at a problem and then coming out with an answer. And that answer you are communicating. So that's the latter part. So picture yourself here and think of these are attributes that you should have if you're planning yourself to engage as researcher. It's very, very important, right? Very important, curious and creative. And this is not engineering research, scientific research, but let's say as researcher, research in general. But you need to have some of these attributes. And don't think that you are born with these attributes. You can develop these attributes. The mere fact, look, I'm very keen to participate, learn on this, and be part of this journey means that you have some of these attributes. Maybe we need to sharpen, all of us can sharpen these attributes, even however much we have this. So curiosity, creativity, very important. And you are determined, we need a solution. And engineers are driven by problems, right? They say problems should inspire an engineer because by nature, you have to be a solution seeker. And your solution is not just for one person, it's for the society. So you need to action-oriented. Why? Because you can't just say, I'll do it tomorrow, it's a year later, I've done what I want to. No, it's not. Solution has to be sought, solution has to be delivered, means action. So for that, you need commitment, right? It's not, people may talk about work-life balance, but as a researcher, sometimes work-life is there, but sometimes you may say there's no real balance because at some times you may have to commit yourself 24/7. It's such that commitment has to be serious. But the point is you will enjoy, as I said, engineers thrive on problems. Problems are the inspiration. So you may have your commitment because I'm a solution seeker and why you want to give solutions. And why you are looking at problems and understanding and seek solutions because you have to be empathetic in the sense that you understand each other's pains, problems. You feel it yourself. It's not being sympathetic, but being empathetic, right? I understand your issue And therefore, I am out to resolve this for you and for me and for everybody. And I am going to put in time and commit myself. Of course, one very important part is you have to be a reader. You need to communicate yourself, but you must also seek communications from those others who are doing that thing. So you need to look around, read as much as possible, and that has to be part of your DNA. And effectively, you need to communicate. So that's the end point. So think of these qualities and sharpen them. And why I want to stress very quickly before entering to the topic, just going there. And it's nice to see 300 plus here. Now you just see that, and all of you are looking at being a researcher, right? It's what you communicate is as coming out of a researcher. So what is happening is for Sri Lanka, this is a very sad number. This is one of our biggest problems in our economy because we have not supported researchers. We have not supported researchers to thrive. And you can see this example of the latest data from Sri Lanka. About 283 researchers per million population. And a little older data for Singapore says 8,486, right? Researchers per million. Now, what is striking is when you multiply by that number, our number by the entire population, we don't have the number of researchers what Singapore has per million. And Singapore has just 5+ million people. Now, this is the difference why Singapore is one of the top 10 most innovative nations in the world, there for like 5-6 years. And Sri Lanka is languishing in near 100. And nobody looks at it and really respect for that scenario. And that's why we are in serious trouble today. So it's nice to see all of you embarking on something that will really add value to our economy and our country if we translate ourselves to be researchers. So I always try to say that we have more elephants than researchers in Sri Lanka, and we are quite worried about the elephant population dwindling. So think about it, but think about with passion. Yes, I understand the problems that exist, and I'm going to be an engineering problem, taking engineering problems, a solution seeker. So when we speak of engineering problems, because we are very sensitive to society, because we see the problems out there, we may always speak the word, instead of the word problem, we can also say as need. You know, people need gas, people need fuel, people need medicine, people need lenses. And the lenses don't, is not the doctor in this case I'm referring to. We need the lenses to be produced. We need to know how to do that. Look at what happened in the Aravind Hospital in India, right? They went into the operations, they developed everything in a sense, because they knew if you want to scale, you need to bring the cost down, but you're not depriving quality. So you can understand the problem in many ways. So identify or visualize a problem situation. That's the start. Because all of you to write something, you have to have solved something. And to have solved something, we need to have understood, okay, an existing problem. And of course, just because problems exist, it may not be possible for you as an individual to go out and solve the problem. All the problems, right? You have to select something. That's important and convert that into your research in life, or the first research in life, or another research at this time for your life. But by doing that, you may be helping to solve a greater problem, right? Like we do with climate change. I can't solve the problem climate change myself, but I can bring solutions to the table. I can change myself so I become a solution as well, right? So that means I'm analyzing the problem. So you first look at the problem, you try to understand the problem, then understanding is analyzing it. So it has to be something that can be broken down into bits and pieces. So it's easy to understand it in more depth. And when you try to understand, when you do understand it, you are on your way to solutions. And of course, these tools are sciences and other methods. And these are the creative tools that you bring to the table for the analysis process, right? So it's important we understand this. This is an engineering problem or an engineering need. Why I say engineering? Because engineering is connected to the society and society transformation. We don't produce one tablet. We produce tablets for cure headaches of everybody, right? So scaling is a part, and we need to understand this in our society in different directions, in different segments, and that's also an issue, right? How to scale up a solution. It may itself be a very good engineering research, and we can give examples. So 3 things you must immediately think about in looking at your selection. So we must understand what is the problem, the 3 W's. What is the problem? What is the need? It's very easy to identify needs today in our Sri Lankan society. Somebody can say, okay, needs are in dollars. We need dollars. Or I may say, okay, I need my rupee stronger. I need to strengthen my rupee. Forget about the dollar, right? And I can do that through my work. That's for sure. And that's what we say. Engineers change, like problems into solutions and weaknesses into strengths by our action. So who means the community that stands to benefit when you solve this problem. Essentially, the community that's having the problem is identified by who. And then the question why. Of course, why it is important to solve the problem. Let's say you work in an industry. You have a problem, or you see a problem to a party. It may be your own internal community, they have a problem, right? So who is answered? But then you may have to justify it. You should think, okay, let me see the importance of solving the problem, because you have to select the plenty of problems around, but you must select something that you need to solve. And the logic comes because it's important to solve this for these people, because they are under great stress. We must alleviate this issue. So the why becomes clear, and why becomes clear, and you may have to justify to somebody to say, look, I'm taking time off, or I'm marking my time here to contribute to solving this problem. So you need to be very strong in identifying what, who, and then pushing yourself with the understanding of why. Something in any problem solving which is now sacred to us is the scientific method, right? We teach this in A-levels to not just to science, but even to arts and humanities. The scientific method is a subject even in humanities. So this method, because you can have a social problems being solved in that manner, it's still the scientific method. So just because we are having an engineering problem and we are doing an engineering research in trying to solve, doesn't mean we take the scientific method away. So I just highlight which is a scientific method, came from Bacon, and it goes back to, let's say, even Aristotle, right? So an observation, and that observation leads to a question. And this question, you formulate a possible solution, thinking, okay, this may be it. And that's your hypothesis. Then you work around with an experiment or with a different method to either prove or negate or to look at this hypothesis. And then you have a result coming out, and then you work on this cycle. So this structure of how you tackle a problem is not changed, even if you take an engineering research, right? So we follow strictly understand the importance of scientific method. And failure to adhere to this scientific method has also landed Sri Lanka in today's trouble, right? As a result of taking decisions where it's very important we have not followed the right method. And as a result, we ended up in a very, very bad situation. So remember this, we have this method, and you can discuss more on the method, but it's not the way here. I'm not saying that The word science, because it's there, we are not ignoring it. It's still a foundation aspect for our work. It's like our father of hydropower, engineer Vimala Surendra, right? Now, this is the difference. Now, what I'm just trying to emphasize here is that you saw an opportunity. He identified an opportunity of energy that exists at a different level, a water body that is at a height, that if it's allowed to flow, you can use your potential energy, and then you can the kinetic energy transformation and get that mechanical energy, which initially was a potential energy, transferred to generate electricity. Now he spent his life getting this done, and he was doing that against, he didn't have support. Doesn't mean that we always will get support when we see an opportunity. Even something as like important as this. So invariably, he really sacrificed a lot. In a sense, he even decided to be a politician to ensure the result is coming. So that is that commitment, right? Now that time when he decides to be a politician is completely probably different from today's politician, right? So even when we say engineers, we are inspired by problems to solve. So we see maybe the rest are inspired by creating problems, right? So so the father of hydropower, engineer Vimala Surendra, is something that we can think, okay, I'm in this industry, in identification of an opportunity, the need. So just use the word problem to a need. What he saw was, look, we need electricity, and electricity is a very useful asset to have, right? And it empowers us to do so many things. So he was looking at now, he saw this and he sacrificed, committed himself to deliver. So this is the Vimala Surendra Power Station, later on the name from him. So this is what you have to think, right? We have this problem. So he was looking at light. And you can see these examples. And why I'm giving examples is to think about when you select a research project or select the problem, how to motivate yourself to look at something. And selection of a problem is a very important thing, because that actually can, it propels you into a real sound future, or it may just may do not much to you because you have selected something really not relevant or not important. Now here is an interesting one, right? And I will here look at how the knowledge that exists is being put together rather than creating new knowledge, but you create a new solution. So this is recently was going around in around in news, let's say viral, about two engineers who came up with this sand battery. Of course, the naming was not done by the engineers who came out with the system. It was done by a journalist. And because technically, because of the word, the concept became more viral, right? Anyway, so why the need? The need, they come from Finland. And Finland shares a long land border with Russia. And Russians, due to the war with Ukraine, they are looking at threatening the rest of the economies, like European Union, with cutting gas out for winter and so on. Reason, because they have put embargoes on them. But Finland, on the other side, is also worried there may be an issues for them, and they also get this gas. So here there is an impending winter, and we need this warming up. And how can give a solution? So here was the sand battery, right? Issue was, okay, they were looking at, see here, I saw this, I demonstrate this, because there's no new knowledge here. It's the knowledge that exists, but put together to come up with a solution to the issue. Now that's a great engineering solution, right? Because you are not pushed like in science to come up with a brand new pushing the frontier, but you do actually here push a frontier of a different sort. right? So the concept of seasonal storage of heat is well established. We do this for temporary heat storages and transfers across by recovery of for thermal energy recovery in scenarios. Now here is extended time, but what they observed was here we have solar and wind, and we have extra electricity at times. Why don't we use this electricity? And what they did was use, they basically like using in a immersion heater. You use direct resistant heating and dissipated the electricity for thermal energy and use the sand for the energy storage. So essentially, the thermal energy created by the dissipation of electricity in the heaters were picked up by the sand, and sand became a thermal energy storage. Of course, once you have temperatures as high as 500 degrees C, you can do different things, right? So for for them, you are talking about hot water used to heat buildings. Now you see a putting together and looking at a need and then coming out with a different solution. And this type of solutions, now once you see, we can also have it, but not for maybe, we don't need heating buildings, but we may think about looking at if MENA has excess electricity from the wind farms, we may look at an engineering solution. So this is why each one of us in our place of work or in our society, and with access to this knowledge, and also seeing we can come up with different solutions. And I'll keep on stressing this in the problem selection. So just to conclude on this point is, which is something unfortunately we should stress strongly. You cannot have an economy without engineering, right? And this comes from Harvard Kennedy School of the Harvard University, but something we seriously must position ourselves, and doing research and having communicating what you have done, because what you have done is important, is a very important step in this positioning of engineering. And mind you, we really need our economy to be changed for the benefit of all of us today, right? But what I'm saying is, as engineers, we are in a strong position to deliver, and not just changing numbers like some others are doing, and without a clue of how to use this. And that's the sad part. So it's up to us probably to position. So this is the cycle that we go through in an engineering problem, then a problem into research, and then research into the solution. So ask and imagine, you look at your need and problems, maybe your own industry as society. I keep on stressing this. So you ask in the sense, you visualize, you check, and sometimes you don't really see a problem, but people are suffering, and maybe because you're not really understanding it. So you need to have this communication there as well. And I highlighted imagine because imagination is a very important tool. Like Einstein, why I put Einstein on the side is because Einstein said once that imagination is a much more powerful or more useful than knowledge, right? In that sense that because that's your creative soul, you're expressing the ability to express your creative soul comes from being imaginative. And that's something we need. Okay, what if, why can't I do this? What do we do it like this? You keep on asking why this solution, this is happening here. Why can't you bring this? So those two Finnish engineers came up with a very imaginative solution. And then they did plan, they created. So we have now a sand battery. Now that sand battery is not confined to a lab. That sand battery is out there in the society. So it can be scaled up, it can be modularized, it can be used elsewhere. So it's a fully fledged demonstration. So you plan and create, and it's been completed. Of course, we always can improve, right? And maybe improvements may be in a different direction. As I said, once you have 500 degrees Celsius energy stored with a thermal mass, you can run different cycles and achieve different ends and different means. So you can carry on this cycle. And that is what we have to look at, right? So I hope you have got an idea on the how can you resolve. So I keep on strengthening this argument, because this is what, and I put in elements of how do you plan and how do you create and so on through an example as well. It will be always through examples just to highlight certain points. So remember, these are defining issues for us today, and it may be even greater. You cut across energy, food, health, right? We can say, oh, at one point, we have problems with energy, serious problems with energy today, right? So can we say we don't have energy? No, the point is we don't have access, though we may see energy all around us. Food, we have a serious issue, right? And I come back to that. Health, soil fertility, aging population. We are not becoming younger in Sri Lanka. While the other nations, there are differences. So this is also a big challenge, right? And natural resources, biodiversity, transport, education, economy, industry, services, and administration. I'm not going to go detail, but you probably can. Now, remember, if I take an engineer as a problem solver, can I, as an engineer, go and change the administration? Yes, information technology world, from this IT, coding, smart, being smart, we can do hell of a lot in ensuring a smart administration, right? We understand the need. We don't need 15 people to do just something simple. So there's so much of solutions we can bring in, and that may be your research work, because we need to address, there's plenty of problems one can carve out from these areas for us to engage and resolve. Now, these are very broad issues I'm taking, energy of the country, right? So you can drill down and do something like the Finnish engineers. So there's so much of opportunities, and so that's a nice part. So just imagine 350 of you taking an issue from this and taking it to immediate commitment to find a solution, because when you find a solution, you're solving this need or solving this problem. And while communicating, it enables somebody else to do, right? So you can, like the development officer in Vaunia, who came up with the IT solution for the petrol issue, right? And then scale it up, and it was going. But the point was, okay, we need to adapt. Others must sense very fast and see the usefulness. But the point is, he delivered something in his own initiative to come up and enable resolving an issue. Now, that's very important, and this exactly is what we're talking about today. So, observations. So there is a structure, in a sense, not a structure, but a pathway. Now, that's why we have a certificate course, a type of thing. Now we say, okay, do this, do that, and so on. So we can put these concepts into a little bit of a roadmap. Right now, how do you organize your observations? So when you see an observation, there's a very close thing in defining this engineering problem or engineering thing into a research. In research, we are very connected to the existing knowledge, right? I told you, problems are the inspiration for the engineers. Scientific tools, science and the other methods are the creative tools for the engineer to work on. Remember to synthesize these two, because one's an answer to the solving the other, the first one. So literature is a very, very common thing, can be of different ways, right? So I put that observation there. I then immediately look around me, who has done what, and so on, and then try to formulate my research problem, because I should do something which I know it's worthwhile doing. So there should not be an immediate solution, right? At least acceptable to you. It may be a cost one, right? You may see that, look, that is a solution to this problem, but it's cost hell of a lot. So then I can innovate by working on the cost one and innovating to see that cost is reduced. So that's a great improvement when you bring down the cost. So we say, if you see a cost is very high and your target is, I'm going to work with the problem is bringing the cost down to 1/10 of the value. And when you bring that value to the 1/10 of it, we had successfully done it. That's an innovation. That's important for us to understand. And then you solve the problem for very many people because suddenly that solution is affordable. So this is the engineering problem being put into research and resolving, right? There are so many areas where we can work on to bring the cost down for sure, but that's not happening. And because the costs are high, we can't do. As I go back to the Aravind Hospital in India, an excellent example, right? We are talking about bringing the lenses from overseas, and if the lenses don't come, postpone the cataract operation. Why can't we do this, right? And enabling the cost to be down as well. So these are also challenges. And interestingly, you're definitely not the first person to do that. But yet, you are taking a need and a problem and determined to do that at a different cost, making it affordable and ensuring the problem is resolved. So that's an engineering problem. Enabling the lenses to be on the hands of the doctor so that the patient is supported to give back the sight that they are losing. Imagine the empathy that you are having when you take that, as I said, as a parameter factor for your qualities of a researcher. So you have this literature search, and you will do calculations little bit. As I said, it's not, you don't need always double integrals to look at, right? What's the cost of that? What's the cost of this? And that's the challenge. And I'll give some examples like that. You have to describe your research. Once you have identified a problem, then you break down that problem into sub-issues, because final answer actually relies on solving other intermediate issues, right? So it's like somebody asks a question, eating the elephant, right? You still have to break it into bits and eat it. Otherwise, you can't put the whole thing in the mouth. So that's it. So however the problem is, you need to break it down into these manageable chunks. These manageable chunks is actually also your imagination, because you dissect it, you break it down into parts. It's your work. You are doing it. You are spending time. Nobody's telling you that, right? It's not there on a book. It's you who is now planning your strategy. How do I solve this problem? And that is your research plan. So this breaking it down with the knowledge, which is a literature search, and the literature tells you where you are. And then gradually it evolves into a research plan. And that may be what we call even a research statement. As you start, you have to give a research statement. This is the project that I'm going to work on. And you build up this picture of, at the end, I am optimizing, I am having this solution, and I have a working prototype or something. So you have to detail it out at the beginning. In your head, you have all lined up. And life is not a straight line. So research is also not going to be a straight line, even though you put in that on a A4 paper and it's all there nicely, step A, step B, step C. We know life is not going to be, the research is not going to be like that. But you need to plan. So planning is an essential thing in the problem solving, right? So we will be answering the question through this: what do we know and what do we not know? Where there's knowledge, and in big science, there will be a lot that we do not know. In the engineering problem, what we do not know may be how to bring the cost down, right? The knowledge still is all out there. But you may be doing something that will bring the cost down, because you don't have an answer to that factor. How am I to give this at this value? That is still you don't have an answer. So you now search for that answer. So then you have a research question, right? So you have a research question. Now I stress on the research question again. When you look at, I very much like this set of letters to a young scientist. The book is Edward O. Wilson, who was a biologist. So it has its for a really a little to a science, but as I said, for engineers, every problem is an inspiration. Hope, that's the way we define ourselves. But he said, every problem is an opportunity. Sure, that's it. Because the more difficult the problem, the greater likely the importance of its solution. For sure. Just imagine if we can bring petrol prices down to 100 rupees. Okay, then how? Am I to bring the current petrol down to 100 rupees with as petrol? Okay, my issue is I need transport fuel. I really don't need petrol. I need a transport fuel. So if I bring, let's say, ethanol and ensure it for 100 rupees, knowledge is there. I'm not doing anything different, but I know that's a problem, and there's a big opportunity if you solve the problem. So you see the sound. But his message was, solve something that is not solved, that has not been solved. So he said for a researcher to pick something that is not being answered. So that's important. Sometimes in the quest for the degree or the certificate and for different issues, we select a problem, we jolly well know the answer and write it down, put it out, and then be happy with it. But you are cheating yourself, you are cheating the rest of the community. And that's why we don't add value with some of the research that we are doing. Because we are doing what we know. We know the answer. We are just packaging that, and then with time, with a little later, we say it. There's no audience for that solution because the solution is there. So it's important when you plan out a strategy to publish on something, having selected the research which we start looking at today, you select something difficult. Because when you solve the difficult problem, you will feel very happy that I did something difficult and I took on the challenge. It raises your confidence level. It improves you as a person. And from an engineering point, if you have selected something of relevant to the society, you know the satisfaction is so great. So I would look at these 4 quadrants, right? This is relevant to science, this is relevant to engineering, this is relevant to any researcher. How to select an area for research, right? So there are 2 things in a problem. When you study something, you can go into depths, right? So depth of search. There's also problems. When you solve that problem, very useful at the end. So you have this 2x2 quadrant. From a management point, these are very famous diagrams, these 2x2 quadrants, and then filling with various things. But this I'm saying it very easy. So if you plan it, if you think of a problem today, you can just put this into any corner, any of this quadrant, and follow my advice here that I'm saying. It's not my advice. I am also taken this advice. So you can see somebody like Niels Bohr, which is on the top left-hand corner. He was determined to look at where the hell the atom is, or what is this to do with. And so he came up with the Bohr theories and all that. Now you can ask a question, if I find out the address of the atom, is it going to help me tomorrow? Answer most certainly is no. So useful at the end of this research is no. But depth of search, fantastic, because there's serious science in this. You're learning something that you never knew. Fine, that's basic research. So you have on the right-hand top corner, Jenner, sometimes called the Jenner quadrant. Now the Jenner came up with vaccination concept, right? You inject yourself and save yourself from a disease. Now there's great depth of search because you never knew it's possible. You know medicine to a disease, you never knew I can prevent the sickness by inoculating myself from something. Now we know we are rushing to get our vaccines. Not 1 dose, now 4 doses, right? So it's all started with Jenner. But the point is, useful at the end? Yes, definitely, because I am preventing a disease. So you can see sometimes in your selection of a project, it can be serious depth and also seriously useful at the end. Now, the important quadrant here is the Edison quadrant. I'm saying all are important, not all, except one. Now, Edison didn't come up with great science, no great insights. Even though he is one of the most patented, he is having the most number of patents to his name, 1,000 plus. So he comes into this engineering research quadrant. You bring knowledge, you synthesize, you look at what the society is having undergoing pain, you deliver a result, and his was one of his bulb. He didn't invent the bulb, right? He made a better bulb, which was noticed. Then he came up with a company, General Electric, right? So just not that, he came up with so many other things. But he was putting the knowledge together. So what I want you to think about is, from an engineering research problem, you will be most certainly in this Edison quadrant. You can plan with Edison in mind, but you should never be in the quadrant where I have put a question mark. You don't want to put your identification picture, ID picture in that quadrant, right? Because that is research that nobody wants. You are not adding to knowledge. When you complete it, there is no use at the end either. So think and innovate like Edison. Because there's so much in Sri Lanka we can do with the knowledge that we have, and failure to apply has given us enough and many issues, right? So it's good to think and then solve them and communicate. Write that wonderful paper. I'm going to add to one more to that. I hope this is clear, and I hope you can take a very strong lesson from these 4 quadrants. And if we just imagine, Sri Lanka has about 300 researchers per million, and here we are 300 plus is listening to this today and starting your journey on this certificate course. But your objective is not the certificate. Objective should still not be the paper. You are looking at changing yourself to a researcher because you get your paper as a researcher, not as an administrator or a CEO. You get your paper from being a researcher. And if you convert yourself and do meaningful research question, well, you know, you are helping so many people. You have the opportunity. Edison changed the world, right? And we can see so many such researchers who have enabled changing the world. So you need to define your research question with understanding. And in that understanding, I gave you that structure of literature search, ending up with what you know, what you don't know. And then you have your research question, then you have your research plan. I will come back to the plan again. So you can see. And also that's why we respect, I'm putting on the bulb that is shown in the US Patent Office because Sri Lanka played a role of sort, because Edison was a person who was searching out, and he sent a lot of people to multiple countries to bring fibers to his place of work, the Menlo Park. And his best experimental solution came from bamboo that came from Sri Lanka. But it said that final one is also contested with Kobe, Japan. Anyway, Sri Lanka is listed in this. Of course, we have given our resource and somebody else has done it, but today we actually benefit from this electricity, right? And we have our own Vimala Surendra who ensured that we got it. You can see, he looked at the knowledge available and he decided how to get this light to people. And that's what we need. So many things we have as problems. Look at this. In Sri Lanka, we as engineers have been different to the biology. But look at this very sad fact. If you look at this UNICEF report in 2019, below 5 years of age children in Sri Lanka, worst fed in terms of wasting ratio and the stunting. That is, you're not having your physique for the age. You're not having the waist. Your growth is stunted. And it is sad to see Sri Lanka in the worst 10 countries, still in that category, mind you, but we don't discuss these things. At that time, 2019, we were between Eritrea and Somalia. And I'm pretty sure we have heard of these two countries differently. Imagine Sri Lanka being in this middle, in this point. 9 worst country for childhood nutrition, and the country that was a granary of the East and the hydraulic civilization of the world, coming up with cascade agriculture and all that. Imagine the children of us are in this category and positioned in Sri Lanka in the worst 10 countries of the world. And they grow up because in these formative years, if they do not get nutrition, your cognitive abilities are becoming stunted and your entire growth is affected and the society do not get benefits. I sometimes think that's why there's a huge amount that we are now pushing for become politicians. And you don't need any qualification. And in turn, we have problems, right? So you can see this situation again on expenditure side. We have to put engineering solutions to this. For ages, we have been talking about post-harvest losses, and we still have 50% losses in some foods. And we now today tell, grow more and etc. But we never still speak of waste less and put in technology to ensure that we don't waste. So if we, even with the current production, if we waste less, we have a solution. So imagine, that's an engineering issue. So if you're becoming empathetic, see problems that exist, Sri Lanka has plenty of problems, which are engineering problems, which we can research on to bring solutions by synthesizing the knowledge that exists today. And our communication at the end of the day would be fantastic. Now, this is an example of a metallurgical engineer, Dr. Verghese Kurian, who heard in a discussion from the English at one point, because they were ruling India. So this was from that time, that the comment he heard was, the sewer water in London is better than the milk in Bombay. Now that should hurt if somebody says about your milk comparing to sewerage in London. Now he had a nuclear physics background as well from postgraduate work and metallurgical. He turned himself into a dairy engineer, a food engineer, right? And propelled the Indian dairy industry, company is Amul, cooperative store, to be the #1 in the world. And today that is it. Now, when we in Sri Lanka think of more milk and so on, we still think of buying more cows and cattle and bringing in and having the farming and so on. We don't address the other part. Now, here's a classic case of an engineer listening to something, not agreeing, and then ensuring, transforming. And he went against the wisdom of the day. When countries that are very strong with dairy, like New Zealand and in Netherlands and UK, were telling, look, including United States, that you can't convert buffalo milk into powder. World, that was the opinion. But Korean knew in India, they had lots and lots of buffaloes. And he did it. This was not just a lab experiment. He had the factory. And that's the Amul factory. And then he ensured the feedlot factory. He put it up so the feed were there. Today we speak of our eggs and the poultry being so costly. We bring all this from outside still. I'm not talking about, engineering is not import substitution. Engineering is finding solutions when you can, or when the need is there, so you find a solution. And this is exactly what Amul Kurian did. And it's a fantastic story. So he's the father of white revolution in India, right? And he did it within 20 years. And that's a fantastic story. If somebody wants, you can look at the Hindi film Manthan, right? But as an engineer, if you want to take a problem and turning into research problem, and then coming out with a solution that changes the society, and that's what any engineering problem research should do, because we take a such problem as a need. That's a classic example. So you give this. Look at Singapore. Again, when they were getting the independence, which was a forced independence from Malaysia, they had to buy water from Malaysia. And you know, you can't run a country by buying water for your people. One thing they did was, from very beginning, they became the water conservation and reclamation and so on. And there is no word in their lexicon called sewage. They use the term used water. So a child grows up with, I can have reclaimed sewage be my drink. And that's exactly what a bottle like New Water, if you happen to be in Singapore and drink that, that's what you will be experiencing. That's why I put the straw in the system. That is not going to waste. It's coming back. And that's why in the Singapore Science Museum, the question, can you taste the difference between new water and mineral water from the French Alps? The student is asking. And that's a communication. And this is engineering, because they not only enable this to happen at a time when the water was, other countries were not interested in that technology. Why? Because they were getting that water in different ways. And why should I be worrying about a reclaiming technology like membrane processors? Then not only they did reclaim, they solved the problem, they mastered the technology, and they are global leader. So Amul's answer to the British, enable India to be a global leader in dairy. Singapore has become a global leader in water technology because they were solving a need, the engineering solutions were sought, and the entire research was driven with that. So you have a major issue, you break it down bit to bits, and then come up with solutions. So there's huge amount of research, lots of, as I told you, that your problem, when you initially select your research question, sometimes may appear to be too big. Fine, you take a small bit of it. And I said, breaking it down is your challenge as well. Because you need to solve something, you need to finish it. You are not going to get a lifetime leave to go out and do what you want and get paid. So we had to be practical. Society is not going to wait for a long time, and then there's no reason for that solution. So we need to be engineering, which is practical. We need to think practically as well. So I need to plan, we need to plan. So I take this one example just to highlight few things. As we break down a project, break down a problem into a solution, at the end of the day, we get a solution, the steps that we have to take. Now, obviously, the very first thing I have been now addressing is the research question, understanding various problems. So you have these big issues. So today, Sri Lanka is looked down because we appear to be unable to do anything, even though sitting on huge amount of resources, right? And we have these engineers, and I'm challenging this because you have opted to look at research. And I believe that if we increase the number of engineers who are in research in industry, that would be a fantastic change we can bring to the industry. And of course, to the economy, because remember the sentence, there's no engineering, no economy. So here we had this issue. Significant amount of oil is lost with coconut extraction. You extract coconut powder, milk at home, in the kitchen, and we all use coconut milk, and we extract it from buying coconuts, and you go nuts with the price sometimes, but then coconut oil is also pricey. So here we see that about 40% of the oil is lost with the extracted coconut. Give me 1 second. Here we had a challenge. How can we get? And we looked at machines around, and this was not done by, we were facilitating this to happen. We were identified that there's not only need for a machine, but there's certainly need for a hygienically designed machine. Because otherwise we are feeding people with extracted oil. That's a very bad. And we also have come across these aflatoxin issues and so on. You are hearing, we had that crisis also, among other crises we have been having. So it was the challenge. So the need, why do we lose oil with this material? There's definitely a chance of cost reduction. There's definitely a chance of improving the quality of life of people because I'm going to give this oil. Today we can also think of why can't I get from this oil biodiesel? Well, coconut oil is a fantastic biodiesel raw material. You all ask whether do we have enough nuts. The question is, that's a renewable. If you plan, we can work towards the direction. We don't need to replace 100%. If you replace even 10%, that's a solid rupee gain, right? So we have planned this. The research question is, we have an idea now. How do we develop something, a unit to extract oil? Then you have this toolbox. Literature review is one. Literature review is also helpful in forming the research question. Now literature review is driven with the idea of solving the research question as well to get a more deeper insight. So you will have, broadly, forget about the oil expeller, different methods, what parameters, case studies. As we say in engineering research, we may have these solutions elsewhere, but we may be unable to reach those solutions because it will not be accessible to us. That may be a case of cost. And when you bring down the cost itself is an innovation. So practical applications, when I develop this oil expeller, it's not only for coconut oil or this one. I can use it in Ayurvedic, herbal oil extracts, seed oil extracts. I told you biofuels, so many other options. So it becomes even a platform equipment where I can migrate that equipment to other industries. So that's, I see a greater potential. And this you realize through when you analyze. And you will have your theoretical boundaries and assumptions, right? Can I extract entire 40% of oil in it? Very much probably will be different because no separation process can be 100%. We know that from theoretically. So these are technically those sub-questions. And you may find, look, my research question was big. I don't have the time, the energy, nor the facility to handle all this. But let me solve one decent sub-question. That may be your challenge. Or you may think, okay, my research question is fine. Now, in this case, we took the research question of a development of an equipment to extract oil from waste coconut powder after extracting milk and putting that into a rural enterprise. That was a kind of a challenge. So that's what, like the boundaries we were talking. So you need to provide this, your goals as well. That's another challenge you have in a research, transforming a problem into a research. You need to have your goals clearly defined. Then you can see you will have your main categories, and then you have identified 5 main sub-questions. 5 or X number of sub-questions. You will never have 200 sub-questions, right? So you take critically few things that you're going to solve, and you may end up your research degree. Definitely you will have your research papers coming out. No need for one. For instance, at Moratua, we are hoping to have, if you take the PhD, you will have 2 journal, high impact journal publications, plus 1 index conference publication. That's in an average. So we expect, but researcher can do much, much more. We have had students coming out with 7 research papers. Just imagine, right? So this is, again, a little bit of a structure to your process, right? This question to be sub-questions, then narrowing down on your sub-questions, literature search supporting you in formulating the questions, finding answers, and supporting the plan, and you see the endpoint. So in this exercise, we had these goals, and some of these goals also are in fact, they become criteria for success, because when you put a goal and if you reach the goal, you have that achievement, right? So it's a target can be normal coconut oil expeller for residue after mill, right? That's our target. We don't want expensive one, then it will be out of reach. Remember, I told you about the cost. Cost is always an engineering issue because economics is a guiding subject for engineers. And innovation is the process where we don't depend on economists to tell, look, or an accountant to tell, look, you tell me the price, I don't care. I'm working on that one, I'm going to bring it down. And that's what usually the engineers we should be doing, right? Unfortunately, we have been allowing that to happen in a different way. Anyway, so normal coconut oil expeller for residue. Then domestic small-scale milling sector, we have places where even in Colombo is some place, very no number of places where you have a shop where they run an expeller and people can bring in and then expel oil and go home, right? So domestic small-scale milling center. And what we wanted was it to be initially for this rural area, even a private home end user can be. Above all, there was a hygienic element was put in. Those were not a negotiable, not for negotiation, hygiene. So then you have a research plan. So if your endpoint is an equipment, piece of equipment that is of very high value, you may have, okay, the process is expelling, right? This machine is supposed to carry out expelling. That's the process that's going to. Raw material is this waste coconut powder. Product is coconut oil. And then, of course, there is a byproduct of the residue after oil extraction. What can I do with that? I can also do things with that, right? So you may have break it down for planning. So research plan is something you will jot down. Research statement is you will write on one page. There will be challenges. Somebody will say, if a different university may say, if you want to submit for yourself for a degree, why do you do this, right? Now, Moratua, we have for industry people, we have one MSc with full-time research, where we expect industry personnel to bring a problem, and it's a win-win situation because you get leave for 1 year, you get your salary, you solve an engineering industry problem, and you have your degree and you go back, right? So it's a stepping stone. So you have to have your research statement, you have to have your plan. Gantt charts are known, Microsoft projects are known for engineers because projects is something that we say it's our bread and butter, right? So here now you apply those concepts to the research, because there you are now trying to search something, an unknown something. There's no answer, right? If you have a Gantt chart for a building, you will have, the building is going to come up at the time, unless of course it's a breakthrough novel situation. So then you have the structural principle analysis, design and drawings, and these 5 times, 13 times are examples of how this project, during that this analysis went through 5 times, drawings went through 13 times, and all that. But at the end also we had to do a complete revamp of the equipment as well. Now that was not factored in because this was initially designed by people who have no access to coconut. So that's another interesting thing. Anyway, so the lathe processing you need to have, because we were looking at producing the diagram, sending the diagrams across like the CAD diagrams, and then doing the design here, the production here. So we have the CNC machines. So all these things and the prototype testing and the optimal operating conditions. And if this goes from 1 to 6 smoothly, you will have your process happening nicely. No more waste coconut oil. You are going to get the oil from this, and a rural enterprise is going to come. Somebody can walk into a shop and buy this machine, and a huge solution awaits, and low cost, hygienic, all that. That was our objective. So for that, you need this plan. So because once you have the plan, only you can time it, you can allocate resources. You need to identify who has CNC machine, who has the ability to do this CAD drawing, who has stainless steel, food grade stainless steel, all that. We know we don't have stainless steel coming cheap in Sri Lanka, and that stops us doing a lot of things in our country. So then when you plan, can you produce, how cost of the prototype, tentative value, the real value. So the budget can overrun. And I'm talking as a research because research also have budgets, right? And in research, you really don't have much money because Sri Lanka, again, is one of the worst 10 countries in the world where the allocation of percent GDP for research. So we are worst of many, unfortunately, which we have to address if we want to come around, turn ourselves around. So then it comes more detail. Now, that's again, you will identify. This is your much more nuts and bolts of your research work. What do I want to test? Testing is something that you have to do. Now, this comes from a structural civil engineering example, right? Single shear, double shear, bridges. I mean, like, okay, what's going to happen? And then studying in depth about take an engineering problem because, okay, need to understand how to bring maybe how to improvise, optimize, and then you will have basics questions to answer. So you have your parameters, specimens, test setups may have to be come out differently. And if I want to do this, what do I need? And Sri Lanka, definitely, it doesn't mean it's Sri Lanka, it will happen in other countries as well. We know for sure what is available, where it is available. Maybe if I won't be able to buy this equipment, I may be in a position to go and use it from somewhere else because I don't want to own the equipment myself. That's not going to be helpful. Same for industry. Solving a problem may need equipment, but that doesn't mean you need to buy the equipment. You access it wherever it is. So what I need to order, certain things you need to order. Time frame, very important, right? So do I have the dollars now to order? So then again, a different time frame from coming. So planning, right? Then analytical preparations. You go down, then you will have your first test or whatever. So this is a structural test unit in a building project, research project. And that's your write-up. So what I'm saying is you may have a similar planning diagram that you have to work with. Because when you put your thoughts into paper, remember the word imagination. So imagination to solve, imagination in creativity, even the imagination in this, okay, overcoming your research issues. That's important. So we have this and you end up. So you can see at the end, we also had to look at a lot like this. So there was the design criteria. So consideration points for this. Things like machinability, productivity, assembly ability. It's like ease of disassembly or ease of assembly. Convenience. Remember, this is going for a rural countryside or maybe a home user. You don't have a lot of technology, right? But it's like having a home blender or something where you can easily dismantle, clean it, assemble it, run it, no critical stuff. So there has to be convenience built in. Definitely hygiene, because poor hygiene can lead to disease and even death in the long run. So like we talked about aflatoxin with oil. Efficiency, you have to be efficient. If we have 40% oil, we must try to maximize the recovery and minimize the electricity consumption in order to recover, because our process will be energy intensive. Universality, single phase, 3-phase power, can I go and run it with where everybody can use it easily? So much more universally applicable, and so on. So you come up with, because this is a tool, this is a machine. So depending on if it's a building issue that you're talking about, obviously the consideration points will be different. But you will find, because in engineering issues, you see these issues, convenience, the maintainability, the efficiency, all these things come in, right? Productivity, assembly, they are very much connected to any engineering problem. And so they will be definitely factors in research, right? How am I designing this? My research problem may be improving productivity. My design problem simply may be improving assemblability, right? How to assemble, disassemble. Today we speak of cars for environmental purposes, ease of disassembly. Early days we like composites. Today we like, if I can break the composites very quickly and take different materials away to different parts, so I can ease of disassembly means ease of recycling. So it's an engineering research point may be over a product, and that product may be millions of units being used. But that's a research unit because at the moment that unit is not easy to recycle. Now my research problem is how to make it easy to recycle, right? So you have now come up, you have put an engineering problem that's needs of the order of the day, climate change, I need to be environmentally positive, I need to bring recycle. So in our case on this, we came up with these consideration points. And so for easy handling, the structure should be simple. For people to lift it and put it in position, it should be compact, yet it has to be high efficient. Hygiene means I can't use anything. I must use food grade stainless steel. If it is cleaning easy, I must use disassembly and assembly. In this particular case, one Allen key was the only thing that was needed. So entire disassembly process was turned around with one, was centered around one Allen key, right? So you get one Allen key with a big unit, and that's it. You can turn and disassemble everything. Then it's a unit that's going to be sold. So it's a commodity of sort, specialized unit, and we need to ensure functionality and so on. So you have this design criteria, and these are research criteria as well, right? You can have a list of research goals. And then you may have materials and parts. Why I'm saying this specifically is because of when you start solving a problem or start doing the research, you need to, at an earlier stage in your plan, have an idea about what am I going to need at this stage. Doesn't mean it will 100% be that list, but if you forget to plan, you know, we forget to we plan to fail. So the situation is by thinking early, you would have identified most of the things you need, like food grade stainless steel or the CNC machine, and maybe high-end 5-axis CNC machine, let's say. Maybe only 2 exist in Sri Lanka today. So I need to ensure that if I need it, I need to understand, okay, I get permission, I get access, I have no problem. So something that we need to have a list of materials and parts in our research planning process. So then you have your drawings, your items, you come in, right? So research is now moving on. You may work on a software platform, so you have your access to your software platform. You have your SolidWorks or the AutoCAD or any other Aspen Plus or whatnot, maybe depending on what you're doing. And maybe a couple of software, not just one, because you may be tackling different things. So if you plan it well, your research will go on smoothly. Because mind you, to write the paper, you need to complete it. You can start writing at the beginning. Yes, what you are doing, you can put that in slots and build up your paper as you go on. That will be addressed separately. How do you come up with a skeleton? And you can start filling even from day one, because you are so dead keen. What I'm doing, I'm going to communicate, I'm going to write a paper. Here you see half a process after machining all these parts coming in. So then it becomes plug and play. Of course, plug and play, at the play part, we must get our oil. And I told you, we had a hitch, right? That is interesting, right? Apollo 1 was burnt on the ground. All 3 astronauts died. Apollo 11 landed on the moon, right? So if you give up at Apollo 1 because 3 astronauts were killed and they were burnt on the ground, you would never have man on the moon. So they took those challenges, and they're very much engineering challenges, and you moved on. So this is nothing in a sense. Little bit of oil doesn't come in at the initial stage. So here was the design. This was the machine that's developed. I'm not going to show the video of the machine in operation, but you see the need, the research question. In this particular case, we were not analyzing research papers. We were analyzing patents, right? Because this is what I want to bring in. Because research papers for this type of equipment design, papers do not give you details. You cannot do a proper literature search through papers to come out and answer to this type of thing. And it is much better if you analyze patents, patent literature, which is freely available. There's a big difference between research papers and patents, because patents are almost all freely available, and you need to do that because knowledge is global and protection is local in patents, right? So there's an interesting difference in this. You must, and there's no address this component in research planning. I want to stress that one, and I'll give an example. So an example of an engineer, here's a mechanical engineer who ended up in a chemical engineering department in solving, and then kind of known now in that format, but considered to be a person 100 years ahead of his time. Francis Bacon, and his contribution was the Bacon fuel cell, right? How he started? He knew electricity is needed. Again, a case of electricity. He read in the journal Engineering magazine in UK about an article where when the oil and coal is not there, how are we going to get our electricity? And he kind of came up with the concept of RED, because it was there before. Grove has identified this in 1829 about the fuel cell concept of hydrogen and coming up. When you combine them, you have electricity. His idea was, okay, you have electrolysis, you break water, H2 and O2, and when you assemble, you will have this powering cars, right? Even here in Sri Lanka, even recently, we had the surfacing of electrolyzing hydrogen engine and then transport fuel. Of course, you have to generate your electricity in a different way if you don't want to break the energy issue there. Otherwise, you don't have this perpetual kind of like energy degradation is not happening if it's wrong. So here we have he wanted, why not I combine to get electricity? Though Grove has come up with the concept, he has not proven it. The Bacon spent his lifetime in coming out with the fuel cell. So he was working in a steam turbine production company. He was secretly trying to do his cell. Company was not supportive, and he actually lost the job. Then he moved into this chemical engineering department, moving through multiple departments, and at the end of the day, his cell enabled Apollo program to succeed, right? So this is systems and was consistently looking at experimentation. He was determined this solution is there. So what I'm putting is 100 milliamps per centimeter squared is the electricity that he was targeting. So I said goals, right? Research goals, research objectives, because this is what you have to achieve. You have to say success. So he had 100 as your starting points. Square centimeters was the electrode surface area. Per unit electrode surface area, you are generating 100 milliamps. And he came up with the 230 milliamps with so much of differences that comes through with different membranes, electrolytes, high pressure, high temperature combinations, etc. He came up, and this was what the Apollo program brought in. You will have the company Pratt & Whitney. Some of you may have heard about the Pratt & Whitney. They were assigned in US to support the electricity for the Apollo mission, and they selected this fuel cell. At the time, a brand new concept. And this final scenario is the document that's received to Mr. Francis Bacon with best wishes from the Apollo 11 crew. Neil Armstrong, Aldrin, and I think it's Michael Collins, right? So what a fantastic research and development. And this is not concepts known, the science was known, but having the engineering structure. And the same process of researching and having targets, then working with materials, different materials, and going through this thing. And then finally, when Apollo program for the Whitney, they had 1,000 engineers and 100 million US dollars went in to get Apollo 11. The 3 sets of fuel cells were the cornerstone of the Apollo program in this Apollo 11. Now, but he still wanted, he was not satisfied with finishing the Apollo. he still was directing fuel cells for vehicles. That's why the concept that he's about 100 years ahead of his time, and he passed away in 1992. So coming from industry, working in industry, identifying the need, coming up with a research plan, coming up with targets, and then coming up with engineering solutions that anyone can buy and use it in a machine or place. And that's what. And once you do this, you know, society has changed. So fuel cell became something that was, okay, understood, practical, and having delivered results. Nobody was questioning its usefulness. So you see these examples, and you can take the big end. I'm putting this just to showcase that another element that you have to do while you are planning the research and so on. Today, we know we have a climate disaster. And even when we Sri Lanka right now, this is not in our discussion point. What should we be doing? That is sad, because we are still engrossed with some of the numbers. And we don't think that we can do completely creatively something different. And that's why I'm pushing to the engineers. So we have this issue, and right for back door, right? So whatever we do the predictions today from modeling, 1.5 degrees Celsius is not going to be met. So we have a serious problem. 10 years down the line, not even 10 years, it's maybe 5 years, we have serious issues. We saw the engineering structures in United Kingdom, like bridges, were wrapped, like the Hammersmith bridge in London was wrapped with foil to ensure the thermal heat is reflected back. Otherwise, the expansion would have affected the entire structure, because the country's infrastructure is not ready for that temperature. And the highest temperatures forever was experienced in UK, and wildfires in Europe. So we have it. But what is interesting is we also have another issue behind us. Our next stop, when you go south, is Antarctic, and we have one of the biggest glaciers in Antarctic currently breaking up, and it's melting. Thwaites Glacier. And if this completely melts, we have about a 0.5 meter to meter sea level rise. And we can imagine the issue, right? This is only one small part. If the whole glacier's gone, system gone, we are talking about 7 meters. But half a meter to 1 meter can do dramatic stuff for us as well. So Maldives would be gone. Maldives were there, not Maldives is there, right? So we have to do here in research planning and problem. You can use this concept of what you call concept maps, or better known is mind maps. That helps you to do. So you put your center climate change, then you see what one can do. Sri Lanka, we speak of adaptation, not much mitigation, but we can also do mitigation in a different way by doing what is best for us. And we know when you do it, it's actually best. I'll give an example. That could be an interesting engineering example, research. So climate change is caused by, climate change is managed by, climate change is an evidence of, depending on where you work. Of course, the science is not I'm talking about. So we can work towards engineering research. What can we do? As engineers, if I'm working in CB, or if I'm working in a dendro plant, if I'm working in some power plant, what can I do? Recently, I was listening to Professor Ravi Silva, and a couple of days back, and what he was demonstrating is probably what we don't have is in the generation plan. But can we take these, like engineer Vimala Surendra did in 1930s? Can we take this and push this, right, as research problems? And he was suggesting things like, okay, floating solar in Minaria tank, 18.9 square kilometers, and Serenayaka Samudra, 91 square kilometers. You don't want to fill the whole thing, right? Taking patches of it. And we know University of Jaffna, we have an example now, having done this. And then he was also talking about solar parks across country. So solar parks with the classical footprints, and then pushing them from Kilinochchi to Nilaveli in this area. And so Dankotua of giving these things. I was just thinking, why not these as projects? Because most of the time, what we entered into a project is, okay, if ADB comes with money, we then try to do the project the ADBs want to do. Right? Now, here we have engineering problems. Can solar energy, we know there's Sustainable Energy Authority has published this solar atlas, right? And we know the solar installation in great detail. So it's easy. The physics is known. If it's even photovoltaics is known, we know the levelized cost in these scenarios. Now the cost per unit is coming down drastically. And yet we are resistant to plan in a big way to get solar in. And why not? Somebody takes these as projects and really plan and position it and come out with a communication. So depending on whatever the area of engineering, these things are, you need the need, you see the potential, you see the problem, and you then come up with the solution. Can we look at Narachole, ever breaking down power plant, can be converted into RDF? I remember Engineer Joseph and Engineer Dr. Ray Vijayawardena was all the time telling, okay, it's nice to have Narachole coming with coal for the moment, but let's get it converted to RDF or biomass. And I know at Moratuwa, we have Professor Amra Vijaypal the ISL has published research in at least one paper on converting Narachole, at least partially, to biomass. And why don't we accelerate? I mean, these are engineering problems because the knowledge is there. And like we talk about, can we have dual firing? Can we have these dual units, biomass and coal coming in together? How do you feed the structures and how do you control and so on? So there is enough good, solid engineering research problems that can make an impact to Sri Lanka that we can generate and engage on. So a point I want to highlight is we are talking about scientific writing, but I did mention that we may have to think of patents as well. So this is an example which says research leading to wealth through patents. And I want to give an example because remember I told you engineering is about putting. So we had situation of four scientists coming up with this nano fertilizer in Sri Lanka, writing about it and also publishing a patent. Actually, now they have about 4 patents. And India bought this for like $3.1 million US. And the idea was it can enhance paddy and tea yield by 4 times and so on. Right? Now, did this created a ripple in our decision makers? And let's say Sri Lanka, science is there, the engineering we need now to put this scientific finding on the bench to practice. There will be engineering research in that sense because you need to now develop the sadly, so this is a situation. So you have a publication as well as an intellectual property patent. And it was the patent that enabled this to happen. Usually you will not be able to sell a paper, right? Sometimes when you write, you may have to buy your own paper from if you put it into a publication portal. That's the difference. But that doesn't mean you can have a commercial development, but definitely a intellectual property as a patent when you write, securing your rights, you have a commercial opportunity. So that is why we say with research, we can use intellectual property to generate rupees. And that is an economy that is a knowledge-based economy. So you as an engineer in an industry now trying to look at to do research to have a publication and having a problem that you will solve, remember there is a chance for a patent or multiples through that process. In that case, if you publish the patent, you had to publish it before, you had to secure the patent before the paper. Otherwise, when you write a paper, paper is general knowledge. You cannot secure patent out after writing. So in this team, they wrote the paper after putting the application for the patent. Therefore, they were eligible for an international company to come and purchase. And this was one of the very first intellectual transactions for Sri Lanka. Right? So this is the patent, the US patent. And you see the journal that was published. And as a researcher, sometimes writing for the Sri Lankan address, there's a great deal of challenge. Even though, however, you are writing, the research is fine. Sometimes in some of the journals, specifically in your last one, high impact journal, when they see the address Sri Lanka, they don't believe you can do research. So that's a sad situation we have to overcome, something that we have to fight on. But once you secure a patent, this opportunity exists. So I hope ISL will follow something similar to the certificate course in writing a paper. Certificate course in writing a patent would be of equal value or even more at times, specifically considering for those in industry. And Sri Lanka really needs to generate income from knowledge. Because research is, you put money to generate knowledge. Development is, you use knowledge to generate income. And Sri Lanka needs income from knowledge investment. And the way forward for that is patents, right? So what happens finally, we were going to the airport to welcome the nano fertilizer coming to Sri Lanka. Don't you think it's sad, right? So even though I'm not directly connecting those two, but Sri Lanka was pioneering because you did the literature search, you knew what was not in the world, not a local knowledge gap, but a global knowledge gap. And that global knowledge gap was filled by that research. And finally, we were airlifting nano stuff from this and so on. So that's not the way to do. So what was something lacking for us was, remember the situation, they were telling that, look, you don't have a urea plant in your country. So however much you have your patent, you can't practice it, right? And so probably the sale was, we had to do with a slightly lower value because we cannot properly value it in the sense because of some of our lack of abilities, or not the individual abilities or the personal, but because of our economic abilities. Anyway, a sad story at that way, but I'm showcasing the improvement of importance of patents as well. So we were lacking that engineering translation in scaling up for that project. So it's important that science should follow, engineering should follow, and you can easily identify projects where the scaling up is important, and I probably will be able to use a few minutes to do that. So recapping what I did, I identified research and researcher, and I also went research problem, the need, and I went across the spectrum. Problem selection, so you have a research question, then breaking it down, research sub-question, then you have research planning, and I gave this example of even down to the food grade stainless steel, you need to plan, am I to get it? Otherwise you can get stuck in the because something is missing. You have to have your goals for that research question. They may be quantitative, they may be somewhat qualitative as well, but from engineering, you will have a quantitative goal. Then the research cycle, I showed you the imagination, the create, try, then you will have, maybe you're still connected through research. If you're coming from industry, going back and then improving in that, then you have the iterative cycle. And sometimes very important having prototypes, like I showed you with the coconut expeller. Sometimes it may be too big, but in that case of Apollo 11, you had a working type, and that was what went into, because from an engineering scale, it was possible to use it. So then you are an improvement. So again, I put this bus on the side. It's an early bus in 1941, running with ammonia, right? So that's the type of thing Science exists. Why don't we blend that science like the sand battery to come out with solutions? So finally, I want to just stress one. You need our ecosystem. So if an engineer and we have a CEO, we must also support the researcher. I use this example because Sri Lanka had the oldest hospital in the world. Now we say we don't have any medicine, we don't have this and that, and begging, right? We had surgical instruments, we had that. But here what I'm drawing is not the history. I am more saying those who had ideas to develop surgical tools, develop the system, had people backing them to ensure that hospital came up. So it would have been at the time at Mihintale, would have been the state of the art in the world. So you need, the researcher needs the ecosystem support to run. So like in urea fertilizer, nano urea fertilizer, we didn't have the ecosystem support to the next stage. In engineering, in your industry, you may, as your researcher, you may look for that support from your industry, and that will be much more productive. Bacon didn't have that support. He was sacked from the job. So he had to find his way because he was rich enough. He was able to do that and ended up in powering Apollo 11. Just imagine, in another country. So this is the point. So one last, scaling up is something. So always try to look at opportunities. So when Fleming came up with penicillin, we always forget these people, Jasper Kane and John McKean, right? A chemist and a chemical engineer, right? And the companies Boots and Pfizer. Today, Pfizer is well known, but Pfizer was producing citric acid at the time. And what they did was, and Alexander Fleming's was science. But coming up with this deep equipment to produce penicillin in large scale was what Kane and McKean did. And because of that, they had a deadline. Before the Allied invasion for France in D-Day, June 5th, in 43, they had to have a drug, because potentially Fleming has shown the drug, but then you can't have that small amount and serve everybody. And UK, they were using milk bottles. The Boots company was using lots of milk bottles and growing in the way that Fleming did in the lab. That's not going to work. So in US, Pfizer, they turn around their factory that was producing something else to produce penicillin, and as a result, enable a lot of soldiers to save their life. And today, penicillin is still something that saves us from an infectious disease, right? For that, they needed to develop that equipment like I showed you with the coconut expeller, what we call deep submerged fermentation vessel, where oxygen could be put in. That was a critical thing, how to put oxygen in there. So that was an engineering research. And without that engineering, we would not be having the medicine that we are having today, that actually in the 1950s enabled population to explode too. So finally, I hope you have what I thought was importance of research, and how do you look at the planning, the elements that you have to put in, importance of literature search, importance of discussing with others, having your values, goals, plans, timing, and maybe the support that you need, and to ensure that you are time-bound, you are goal-bound, but your problem is taken from society and you are hell-bent on serving somebody because you have the empathy as a researcher. So let me conclude with this. So for us, we need to do this. And what Munidasa Kumartunga said even before the independence is really relevant today. But as engineers doing research and supporting innovation, we have to look at it, and it's opportunities there, like I showed you with Korean. He never asked for a new cattle or cows of a different breed. He used what he had in Gujarat, but he used knowledge well and transformed, and India became #1. So it's possible. We always say, no, we don't have it, so we can't. So we say we don't have grass, so we don't. Israel is fantastic with agriculture. They have 62% desert. So likewise, a lot of engineering stories can be told that taking problems, taking needs and tackling them up front, enabling you to change. So with that, I think the time is coming, maybe a couple of questions. And I hope I fulfill the requirement to launch the certificate course in scientific writing. My comment is, I hope there will be a course that follows with patent writing as well, because from an industry that is important, from a Sri Lanka, that's really, really is important. And we need not only to write and communicate, we need to write and secure money for our economy. Thank you. I don't know whether you have questions or I'm happy to.
Oh, okay.
Over to you,
Thank
Bandhani.
you. Yes, thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for this first lecture on how to make an engineering problem into a research. I think that all of you have listened to it, and I heard that I have seen that there are some questions. Maybe one question that, sir, have you seen in the chat box?
No.
Let's pass from. Please. Okay, there's one question: how to manage research work without time limitation, job and household disturbances. I'm facing difficulty in validating my FEM research model for my MSc. When I full-time involved in developing model, when it fails, really discourage me. Yes, as engineers, we have this problem with the managing with the time, job and the house disturbances and all. So do you have any?
Yeah, I briefly mentioned this at the beginning about the work-life balance. We talk about work-life balance, right? And I said, yes, work and life will always be there, but the balance may not be there sometimes in research at times. So it's something to be taken, internalized, but that doesn't mean giving in. You can have fantastic life. But that is again something I mentioned by having what is called the ecosystem service at the very end. That's why I highlighted purely by saying, oh, there's a problem, there's the ability to solve, there is this researcher who is going to do that. That person may have issues if the institution or the system is not understanding the relevance of this person trying to do and not supporting. That's why I gave the Mihintale example. At that time, there would have been somebody who come up and said, look, we have the surgical instruments. We have this method of giving medicine. Let's have this hospital. And it became the first. But also to put that up and serve the system, and the ruins to be still visible today means it would have been a solid construction. Something other than the researcher would have been present, right? So that's why I said, yes, you need to understand. If you say you have an issue, maybe you had to draw in line. What I say is always you need to work with being happy, whatever you do, that part. So if you allow the problems to overcome you will not realize your goals. So maybe you need a modification of your goals in sync with, so that's why I said our universities that when you have research projects and having degrees and so on, sometimes we have objectives like up in the sky, and we know that this cannot be done. But I will value the effort that the person put in and the progress made rather than ticking boxes on whether the person has achieved all the objectives. Being sympathetic or rather empathetic towards the issues, but ensuring, okay, that there was definite work done, and then moving on to deliver something and really push the needle a bit and supporting that. And so there won't be that stress of, okay, that I'm not ticking the boxes that I should have been ticking at this stage, and so unrealistic goals. So maybe that support from the community is necessary for you as a researcher, and there's definitely need for that change in our system. But that doesn't mean lowering the standard. I'm referring improving the ecosystem of work.
Thank you, sir. Have you seen another question that Shamila asked, that there are so many research done in universities per year, but still there is insufficiency of researchers. What's your idea?
Yes, that's why I was saying, showing the number for Sri Lanka and showing that we have 356 coming into this session, hoping to do research and hoping to have a write-up. And hoping to have a write-up, and was saying, look, if you get imbued with concept of being a researcher, that's a great thing. Yes, we don't have the critical mass, for sure. But that is our expectation of, that's the expectation of these numbers when you see the enthusiasm, hopefully.
Yeah, shall we give a chance to Mr. Pushparaja, is our council member. Mr. Pushparaja, I think you can unmute. Mr. Pushparaja.
Yeah, good morning, madam, and thank you, Professor, for the wonderful session. Actually, one small suggestion regarding the questions, because the members, if they can send the message questions to separately, that means to Professor Banduni or Professor Ajiti Alvis or the moderator. Otherwise, there are so many wishes, messages, and everything. So it is, I think, difficult to find the questions separately. So it's my humble suggestion. If the participants can send the messages to directly to Banduni, Professor Banduni or Ajit Silva, then they can read the message directly. I think it's one more, my suggestion.
Yeah, thank you, Mr.
Okay, thank you.
Raja, I also thought it. We will make that arrangements from
because there are
onwards.
Yeah, it's easy to identify the questions.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions important that if you raise your hand, then I can make you unmute. Anyway, we will start the next session in a week after, in the next week, because the resource person was not available tomorrow. Therefore, that I had to postpone it to the next week. However, that I hope all of you have gone through a very very knowledgeable and as well as informative session. And you know that doing research is not such a problem. And so I have one question, that most of the students are struggling with to find out the problem or the topic, research topic. So how you, because most of our engineering students as well as some other science students, they want to find out a good research topic, good research area. So how can you guide them that how to find a research area? They have interest of several areas, and please elaborate.
One way is, of course, the broader area. I showed you that wherever you look, you can see an issue and then a need and a problem maybe, then how to resolve it. Like I gave you the example of the sand battery. But a little bit of a more planned approach maybe. Let's say I want to look at circular economy and combining water pollution or wastewater treatment. I can look at it like, take for something like an analytic base like Scopus and look at the 10 top papers trending in the area for that area. And then you will get how those researchers have tackled the topic. So that naming the topic and the area that they follow is indicating, okay, the top 10 papers in wastewater engineering are now in this segment. Then maybe you can drill down. So it's a research topic. I mean, it's there. You have these data analytics systems now coming up where you really break this area. But a very simple way is go to Scopus, take your topic, keyword, and then see the top publications or the trending ones. And then you see how what area they are doing. Now, maybe that's something I can very quickly suggest.
Thank you very much, sir. I think that would be a really good suggestion to all our researchers how to find a research area. Not only that water pollution, even if you are in civil engineering or the electronic or electrical engineering, I hope that that's the best way to find out the top 10 research that they have conducted, and that would be really beneficial to you to format or that the form good research topic. Any other, if there are no questions, actually 2 hours that you continuously address us, thank you so much. And I think that no, all are like thankful.
Well, I think you had, there was a question about deductive and inductive. I suppose there may be a discussion on research methodologies and so on, where you have this deductive, inductive, experimental, one can work on. And there was also on questionnaires. I suppose that's something that you can take separately.
Yes.
Questionnaire design and things like that.
There are 15 sessions going on, and I hope that to cover this area, but you have asked okay, from one member. And so once again, give our fullest warm thank to you, sir. Thank you so much for addressing us today in these 2 hours, as well as this starting session or the inaugural session. And thank you once again. And we will sooner start this writing a patent. Especially that's really important, because people, they do research and they don't put the patent, and later on somebody else will take it out. And also that no use for our country or any other country or to society based on research. Because we know that all our engineering students, they conduct the final year research from the beginning to today, even that from several faculties. But I think most of them have not come to surface. So this is a real problem to us, even to the ISL and to our development of our country, the national development and all. And therefore, I think that from here onwards, you have understood that the importance of the research, and also importance of the patenting, and also importance of the publications. Okay, with that wording.
Just a comment, Bandhuni.
Yes,
there was this comment on the side, issues come across during the industry are a great way to find. I also think in a sense that now when I said about the Scopus and the top 10 on the research, they are like on the frontier research part. So if I do, I can have some great engineering problems coming directly from the engineer, the industry, looking at the industry. So like example that I mentioned, like, can I convert Norachole to run on the RDF, refuse derived fuel, or biomass pellets? I would think that as a great one. And even what Ravi was like mentioning about the solar parks and floating parks and things like that, you can come up with a problem area and have a meaningful contribution if you follow that. Probably much more relevant as well. So Scopus is one path, looking at the industry and the need of the society would be another path.
Okay, with that comment, so shall we winding up today's session?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much once again. And we hope that we will meet you once again during this course, because there are several topics that is supposed to cover. And thank you once again, sir. And all the participants, thank you so much. Okay, we will meet you next Saturday at 9 a.m. And we will make the arrangements who have not registered for this course, as well as we will circulate another flyer with the resource person for next week, and also with the research title. Please register, or otherwise that you can use the same link for to attend that particular sessions. Thank you so much. Have a good day.